Q-Tip is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop producers of all time. Born in New York, he helped introduce the world of East Coast jazz rap, and his group, A Tribe Called Quest, helped to popularize it. The centerpiece of Q-Tip's production setup was the MPC 3000. In an interview with Scratch Magazine from 2008, he says, "I usually come up with a sketch on the MPC 3000. He explains, "Then I shoot it to the guys. Then they take it and play with it. And I take what they do sometimes and chop it up. So it was always going through processing. It will morph and change to become whatever it was meant to become." And that way, jazz was a little bit of an inspiration, especially with the way Miles Davis was so organic in what he did with his band. He'd go for certain colors and certain vibes, like a painting. Making music is like that, with the palettes, the colors, the tones, and the hues. The next centerpiece of Q-Tip's setup was the SP1200 and the S950 combination. According to Q-Tip in the Movement interview in 2009, he was asked, "The one thing that always told me something was the Q-Tip production with the drums. What kind of equipment did you use?" The SP1200 for drums, for the loops, the Akai S950. That's something that Large Professor put me onto. I just like the snap of it. For me, I was always into big drums with the tin-like smack of it. Q-Tip also used the MPC 2000 XL. You can see him on the cover of his album holding it over his face. In my opinion, Q-Tip helped to make the MPC 2000 XL as popular as it is today due to that cover. Q-Tip also used the MPC 2500. You can see him in his video using it. Q-Tip also used the MPC Renaissance. You can see him in his video using it. If you can't tell by now, Q-Tip is a huge Akai fan. He also used the MPC 4000 and the MPC 1000, as well as other brands like the Roland Phantom. In his January 2008 remix interview, he says Q-Tip goes even farther with oral textures than he did on Open, trying numerous methods to get the sound he hears in his head. The MPC 3000 has been his main workhorse. Recording engineer Blair Wells says, "But there was a period where he went back to the EMU SP1200 for obvious tonal reasons. He tried the MPC 4000 and the 1000, and some of the Roland boxes like the Phantom X-Series workstation with the drum pads, the rework and samples. To wrap up the drum machines, Tip used the Acetone Rhythm Ace FR6. He posted this picture on his Instagram. Now let's get into the keyboards Q-Tip used. He loved using the Fender Rhodes Suitcase Mark I and the Fender Rhodes Bass. You can see them alongside other prolific keyboards, including the Juno 106, Wurlitzer electric piano, and the ARP Odyssey Selena string ensemble on his list of gear. Q-Tip have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums of all time and is a top 10 hip-hop producer of all time. He's went on to produce some of the greatest artists like Nas, Kanye West, Kendrick Lamar, and Jay-Z. If you have a producer that I haven't yet done, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Dr. Dre is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Compton, California, he helped introduce the world of West Coast gangster rap and single-handedly popularized G-Funk. The centerpiece of Dr. Dre's production setup was the MPC 3000. You can see him using two of them in his picture in his recording studio. You can see him also using an M-Audio Keystation Pro 88 controller keyboard. Right under the computer monitor, you can see him using the Native Instruments Core 2. The MPC 3000 is one of the greatest drum machines of all time and have been picking up steam in the last few years in price. Dr. Dre also used the world-famous EMU SP1200. You can see him in his picture using it alongside the Akai S900. He also used the MPC 2000 XL. You can see him in his commercial using it. Last but not least, he used the Fender Rhodes, Korg Triton, the Korg Trinity, and the Alesis Andromeda. You can hear his co-producer of 10 Years talk about it here.
I remember the day that I got the courage to bring in my computer with all of my plugins and soft synths for the first time. And Dre, up until this point, had used everything was hardware, whether it was Rhodes or the piano, real instruments, or it was just little one space rack mounted pieces of gear that we were all synced up using, the Triton or the Trinity and those Korg keyboards that you would get back in the day, the Andromeda, which was amazing.
Dr. Dre have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums of all time and is a top 5 producer of all time in any genre. He's gone on to produce and discover some of the greatest artists like Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, 50 Cent, and Jay-Z. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. The Neptunes is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop production teams of all time. Formed in Virginia during the 90s, the Neptunes consisted of Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo. They helped introduce the world to the futuristic synth-based keyboard sounds of their production and veered away from the heavy soul and jazz samples of their predecessors. The centerpiece of the Neptunes production setup was the Korg Triton. You can see them using it in this picture. The Korg Triton was used to create some of their greatest songs, including Eclipse Grindin', which they used the percussion kit, Nori's Nothing, which they used the bamboo silver flute, and Gwen Stefani's Holla Back Girl, which they used the Chorus E guitar preset. They helped to make the Triton famous with a lot of the presets they used in some of their biggest songs of that era. The next machine that the Neptunes used is the ASR-10. This was primarily Pharrell's machine of choice, and according to Chad, Pharrell would come to him with sketches of beats on the ASR-10. You can see him using it in this video. The Neptunes also used the M-Audio Axiom 61. You can see Pharrell use it in this video. You can also see Pharrell using the M-Audio Oxygen 49 in this video. Pharrell had his fair share of M-Audio keyboards, including the Axiom Pro Advanced 61 key. You can see him using it in this video. Pharrell also used the Alesis V149 keyboard controller. You can see him using it here. Chad Hugo loved to use the Moog series of keyboards. He used the Mini Moog Voyager. You can see him in this picture using it. The next keyboard that Chad used was the Micro Korg synthesizer. You can see him holding it up in the Snoop Dogg Drop It Like It's Hot video. The last keyboard that Chad used was the Moog Slim Fatty. You can see him in the video using it. Last but not least, you can see Chad holding up the APC-40 Ableton controller. The Neptunes have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums and songs of all time, and is one of the greatest production teams of all time. They've gone on to produce for some of the greatest artists of all time, like Jay-Z, Kanye West, Snoop Dogg, and Gwen Stefani. Shoutouts to Sean for the recommendation to cover the Neptunes. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Daz Dillinger is one of the greatest and most influential West Coast hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Long Beach, California, he helped define the sound of West Coast hip-hop in the early 90s. The centerpiece of Daz Dillinger's production setup was the MPC 3000. In this interview with MV Remix, he was asked, "What kind of equipment do you work off of?" Daz answered, you know, MPC 3000, Motif, Reason, a lot of records. You know what I'm saying. Get little sounds here and there, ideas, all kind of shit. The MPC 3000 is one of the greatest drum machines of all time and have been used by some of the greatest producers of all time. He also used the Yamaha Motif, which is definitely an underrated synthesizer. Reason is one of the best doors in the industry and have limitless potential. Daz have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time and helped push West Coast hip-hop to where it is today. He's gone on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists like Tupac, Dr. Dre, T.I., and Snoop Dogg. Shoutouts to God Black for the recommendation to cover Daz Dillinger. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Warren G is one of the greatest West Coast hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Long Beach, California, he helped define the sound of West Coast hip-hop in the 90s. The centerpiece of Warren G's production setup was the MPC 60. In his interview with DJ Ski, he said,
in one of my bedrooms, all I had is studio equipment, and I did the sample, plugged in my VCR into my MPC 60 and sampled the regulators. You know, all of that I sampled it and put it in different pads. And after I finished it, I called Nate. I said, Nate, I got a record, man, that we should do. Go back and forth on, that'll be dope. So he came over, he heard it, he was like, damn. And so from there, we hooked the mic up in the closet. Wow. And I called my engineer, Greg. He came over and recorded it, and there it is.
The MPC 60 is one of the greatest drum machines of all time and have been used by the greatest producers of all time. Warren G is a self-proclaimed Akai fan. He used the MPC 60, the MPC 62, the MPC 3000, the MPC 2500, and the MPC 5000. You can hear him talk about it here.
I mean, number one is the MPC, which I started out on, the MPC 60. I went from that to the MPC 62 to the 3000, the 5000, the MPC 2500. I'm just addicted to the MP because that's what I started out on, and I still got the very first MPC. You know, actually that's the same one that we used on a lot of the records on the Chronic too. I still got it. It's vintage, but it still works, and I still have it. And I'm a Akai MPC fan, and that's one of the things I like to use to program.
Last but not least, Warren G used the MPC Renaissance. You can see him using it here. Warren G have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time and helped push West Coast hip-hop to where it is today. He's gone on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists like himself, Tupac, Jeezy, and Nate Dogg. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. The Bomb Squad is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop production teams of all time. Formed in Long Island, New York, the Bomb Squad consisted of Hank Shocklee, Keith Shocklee, Chuck D, Eric Vietnam Sadler, and Gary G. Wiz. They helped introduce the world to the bombastic, harsh, atonal sounds and samples of their productions. Hank and Keith Shockley was the main producers in the Bomb Squad. The centerpiece of the Bomb Squad's production setup was the SP-1200. In an interview with Red Bull Music Academy, Hank Shockley said, "Then manufacturers started coming up with stuff, so we went out and purchased the SP-12, and that took the game to another level, because that was sampling drum/percussion machines. That only gave you 10 seconds, but the 10 seconds was divided among the pads, so you could get 2.5 seconds for 4 pads, or however you divided it. They used the 1200 in tandem with the Akai S900. He talks about it in this interview where he said, "So you know, an EMU SP-1200 is not the only drum machine, and you've seen a lot of articles that we've been quoted about using the 1200. No, the 1200 was one of them. The other one, we will put drum sounds in the S900 as well. The next drum machines that the Bomb Squad used is the Akai MPC-60 and the Korg DDD-1. They also use the Ensoniq Mirage sampler." Hank Shockley speaks about it in this interview where he says, "Drum machines brings a different characteristic to the table. So you know, a 1200 is not the only drum machine. You've seen a lot of articles that we've been quoted using the 1200. No, the 1200 was one of them. The other one we will put sounds in is the S900. We will have drum sounds in the MPC-60 and use. We will have a DDD-1, you know. We will use the Mirage and get the Mirage Ensoniq. You know, it all depends upon what we was trying to get across at that particular moment." The MPC-60 came out in the late 1980s and is still being used until this day. It also helped kick off one of the greatest drum machine lines in the Akai MPC line. The DDD-1 is a programmable drum machine from Korg from the mid-80s. It offered 18 electronic drum sounds with a sound that was typical of the era. Basic kicks, snares, toms, rim shots, closed hi-hats, open hi-hats, ride, crash, claps, cowbell, tambourine, and kambasa. Additional sounds could have been added using ROM cards. The DDD-1 also featured a sampling option, allowing very short and limited sampling for that extra edge of unique sounds to add to your drum kit, for up to 2 seconds. Drum sounds can be triggered from the 14 assignable velocity-sensitive trigger pads, and there are some individual outputs as well. The Ensoniq Mirage is primarily used just to sample for the Bomb Squad. Last but not least, the Bomb Squad used the Roland CompuRhythm 8000. In the Red Bull Music Academy interview, Hank Shockley says, "So what I did was, we went in and we brought the tempo down to 92 beats per minute, made the beat on just like a Roland CR-8000. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Roland 8000. It's like you really can't program those beats. They program it with some sort of step sequence time, but the step sequence time you have no control over, so you just kind of like hit buttons as the light go, and then you listen to it and hope you got something funky." The Bomb Squad have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums of all time, and is one of the greatest production teams of all time. They've gone on to produce for some of the greatest artists like Public Enemy, Slick Rick, Bell Biv DeVoe, and Ice Cube. Shoutouts to Eddie Def for the recommendation to cover the Bomb Squad. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Nottz is one of the greatest and most reclusive hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Norfolk, Virginia, he helped define the sound of early 2000s hip-hop. The centerpiece of Nottz's production setup was the ASR-10. In his interview with Red Bull Music Academy, Nottz was asked, "What kind of stuff are you using to make these beats?" He answered, "ASR-10, Motif. Trying to get a crash out of it or something. It isn't big, You don't need anything big to make stuff. A lot of producers think you need these big studios and $1 million equipment to make things happen. It ain't like that. We used what we had. When we were starting out, we had a little 4-track, and that helped us get to where we are now. The ASR 10 is still one of the greatest music keyboards of all time and helped to shape modern hip-hop as we know it. The next keyboard Nottz used is the Triton Motif, which he went on to comment about in a Red Bull music interview as well. Nottz also used the world-famous SP1200. In the Red Bull Music Academy interview, he was asked, "So how did you first start getting into making beats?" He responded, "My father. He was a DJ, and my oldest brother was a DJ. He would make beats when I was a kid, him and 3 of my brothers. Every one of them was different. My oldest brother did some funk beats. The one under him did more like hip-hop shit. The brother older than me was into Miami-sounding beats. So I took all that in and was like, okay, this is what I want to do." They really made me see there was different types of music you could do. They got out of it. I stayed in with my manager here. I had a little 7-second sampler, a little keyboard. Every time I press sample on it, have a little sample up there, press it again and go over it. So it's like overdubbing. I've got all this shit running at one time. It sounded like shit, but it was cool to me. He let me hold his SP1200 one day, make some beats. He taught me a lot on the SP12. That's basically it, man. Nottz also used the EPS a good amount as well. According to the same interview, he was asked, "And you've been using the ASR 10 since the beginning? You haven't changed?" Nottz responded, "First, my homeboy had the EPS. I was messing with the EPS. He saw I was getting good on his EPS. He didn't want me to come over no more. Okay, I'll fix you, dude. But he messed up by introducing me to this money-making dude. The dude was like, I see you do beats. What do you do your beats on? I'm using his EPS. You don't got your own? No. So we came past the crib and said, okay, come outside for a minute. So I came outside. You want a keyboard? Yeah. Put me in his car, went and got a keyboard, man. I've been banging out shit ever since. I don't even go to that dude's house no more. I don't need you no more, boy. That's how I came. Damn, dude laughs." Last but not least, Nottz is known to use the Native Machine MK1. You can see him in his video using the Native Machine MK1. Nottz have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time and helped push hip-hop to where it is today. He's gone on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists like Jay Dilla, Drake, Kanye West, and 50 Cent. Shoutouts to TBS Drink Team, Crazy Chimpanzee, and Jawad Shabazz for the recommendation to cover Nottz. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Bink is one of the greatest and most reclusive hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Norfolk, Virginia, he helped define the sound of early 2000s hip-hop. The centerpiece of Bink's production setup was the ASR 10. In this interview with Scratch Magazine, Bink speaks about using the ASR 10 here.
They had like a barbershop at the bottom, car wash in the back, studio upstairs. So I was in the studio with my man Chance the rapper, and I had the new one. It's a new, back in the day, my man from here, from Virginia, name was Chance. But we were up there banging out, and he was downstairs getting a haircut, just so happened. And he came up and asked me to play some more stuff, so I just started, I had the ASR 10 at the time, so I started just loading in discs, just playing a bunch of stuff for him, trying to strike some small talk in between discs, it'll take a little while for that shit to load up, so.
The ASR 10 was used to make some of the greatest albums of all time and still an undervalued machine. The next key machine Bink used is the MPC 3000. He states in his title interview about the blueprint that Bink got the Moments, What's Your Name sample used on You, Me, Him, and Her from Sylvia Robinson's son, Joseph Scucci Robinson, along with records from the Escorts, Skull Snaps, and others. As Scucci and Sylvia had recently got the publishing rights for various artists' catalogs. Bink then put the moments "What's Your Name" in his MPC 3000 at 45 RPM and sped it up plus 10 or plus 15 RPM pitch-wise, so the sample had a chipmunk sound. Bing then had Skookie come to his Hackensack, New Jersey home, played him "You, Me, Him, and Her," and asked if he could recognize the sample. Skookie didn't recognize it, but Bing told him anyways and cleared the sample. The MPC 3000 is a classic machine that have went up in price in the last 3 years. Bing also used the MPC Renaissance. You can see him using it here. The keyboards that Bing used is the Fender Rhodes and the Axiom 61. You can see the Fender Rhodes here, and you can see him using the Axiom 61 here. Bing have helped produce some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums of all time and helped push hip-hop to where it is today. He's gone on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists like Jay-Z, Drake, Kanye West, and J. Cole. Shoutouts to Rayshawn Bedell for the recommendation to cover Bing. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Timbaland is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop producers of all time. Coming from Norfolk, Virginia, he helped introduce the world to his distinctive stuttering rhythmic style and veered away from the heavy soul and jazz samples of his predecessors. The centerpiece of Timbaland's production setup was the ASR-10. You can see him on his Instagram talking about getting it is a gift and how he used the ASR-10 to make his first hits. His next favorite machine was the Korg Triton. You can see him using it with Jay-Z in the studio here. Definitely one of the most underrated machines, along with the next one. His next favorite machine is the Yamaha Motif. You can see him in the studio with Kanye West using a Motif ES7, and you can see the Motif XS6 in this picture of Timbaland's studio. Timbo also used the Akai MPC Renaissance. You can see him in this picture using one. The next machine Timbaland used was the Open Labs Timbaland Myco. You can see him in this picture talking about it. The next machine King Timbo used is the Ableton Push 2. You can see him in his beat battle against Swizz Beatz using the Ableton Push 2. Timbaland also used the Korg Micro Korg. Timbaland's engineer Chris Godby talks about the process and gear used to make Timbaland's tracks, saying, "Tim has some keyboards with him with loads of sounds in them, mainly the Myco, which is in essence a PC with the keyboard attached to it, and for 20% of the time he'll use some other keyboards, mostly the Micro Korg samplers, on which he also has a bunch of sounds." Korg Micro Korg is easily one of the most underrated synthesizers out right now. Timbaland was a big fan of keyboards. You can see him here using a Complete Control S88. The next keyboard Timbo used was the Dave Instruments Pro 2. You can see him in this picture using it. Timbaland have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums and songs of all time, and is one of the greatest producers of all time. He's gone on to produce for some of the greatest artists of all time like Jay-Z, Kanye West, J. Cole, and Drake. Shoutouts to Denied Confirmation for the recommendation to cover Timbaland. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. DJ Muggs is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Queens, New York, but being raised in Los Angeles, California, he was the soundtrack to one of the greatest hip-hop groups of all time, Cypress Hill. The centerpiece of DJ Muggs' production setup was the SP1200. You can see him in this video using it. The SP1200 is still one of the greatest drum machines of all time for a reason. And as you can see in this ongoing series, how many influential hip-hop producers have used this drum machine? The prices are still extremely high for this machine right now. He also used the MPC 3000. You can see him using a drum machine in this video. DJ Muggs have had his fair share of Akai drum machines. He also owned the 2500, the MPC 5000, and of course, the Akai S950. You can see the MPC 2500 in the studio right here. The MPC 2500 is one of the best MPCs on the market right now due to its JJ-OS compatibility. You can see DJ Muggs using the MPC 5000 here. The Akai S950 can be seen here. A rule of thumb for the S950 is that wherever there is an SP1200 or MPC 3000, you can almost expect to see the Akai S950 or S900 close by. To round off the Akai products, he used an Akai MPD 226 and the Akai MPK 261. In this Instagram picture, you can see him with the MPD 226, and in this picture, you can see him using the MPK 261. As far as the keyboards he used the Moog Mini Moog Model D. You can see it in his recording studio. Last, but certainly not least, is the Roland TR-808 drum machine. You can see him using it in this video. DJ Muggs have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums and songs of all time and is one of the greatest hip-hop producers of all time. He's gone on to produce for some of the greatest artists of all time like Dr. Dre, Cypress Hill, Ice Cube, and GZA. Shoutouts to Eddie Def for the recommendation to cover DJ Muggs. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. No ID is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Chicago, Illinois, he introduced the world to Midwest hip-hop and single-handedly became the early soundtrack to it. The centerpiece of No ID's production setup was the SP1200. You can see him using it in this picture of his recording studio. The SP1200 is one of the greatest drum machines of all time for a reason, and as you can see in this ongoing series, how many influential hip-hop producers have used this drum machine. He also used the Native machine. You can see him in this picture using one. No ID have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop albums and songs of all time, and is one of the greatest producers of all time. He's gone on to produce for some of the greatest artists of all time like Jay-Z, Kanye West, J. Cole, and Drake. Shoutouts to JBM Beats and Slim for the recommendation to cover No ID. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Just Blaze is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop producers of all time. Coming from Paterson, New Jersey, he helped define the sound of hip-hop in the 2000s. The centerpiece of Just Blaze's production setup was the MPC 4000. You can see him in his video using it. The next key machine that Just Blaze used is the ASR-10. You can hear him talk about it in his video.
My first piece of machinery, real piece of machinery, was the ASR-10. And I moved from there to the MP.
Which is not the most easy one to maneuver when you start out, right?
Yeah, the ASR-10 was a little bit took me a couple days. You know what I mean? But once I got
Whereabouts
it, I
was
got
that
it.
when you got used to the ASR?
What's that?
What circumstances were you using the ASR under?
Oh, I just had the ASR, no expanded memory, no SCSI. I think maybe I had the SCSI. No, I was saving everything on zip disk. I mean on floppy disks. 2 outputs and my headphones in my mother's living room. You know, and that was that.
Just Blaze have used a lot of Akai drum machines. Listen to him talk about the MPCs he owned.
Eventually, as things got more serious, moved on to the MP, and I stuck with the MP up until I had everyone at the 60, the 62, the 3000, the 4000, every 2000, 2500. But I've gotten to the point now where I'm done with them.
He also owned a TR-08 drum machine. Here is a picture of it on his Instagram. He also owns an SP1200 and a newer drum machine, the Isla Instrument S2400. You can see a picture with him using it here. The Isla Instrument S2400 is a clone, a brand new clone of the SP1200 drum machine. It just came out last year and is getting a lot of fanfare from the production community. Just Blaze have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time and helped push hip-hop to where it is today. He's gone on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists like Jay-Z, Kanye West, Eminem, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar. He also helped usher Rockefeller Records to the behemoth it was in the 2000s. Shout out to AJVY, SB, and Katrina8402 for the recommendation to cover Just Blaze. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. DJ Battle Cat is a legendary hip-hop producer from South Central California who was one of the most prolific West Coast producers of the late 80s and 90s. DJ Battle Cat broke in as a 16-year-old DJ in the early K-Day era and remains one of the most influential architects of West Coast rap. Dr. Dre also told him about Tom's signature and bars. This was when Dre was leaving to form NWA. He came back in the studio to grab some turntables when he saw Battle Cat having trouble with trying to sequence a drum machine. DJ Battle Cat's go-to machine was the SP1200. You can see it in the studio here. His second go-to machine is the MPC 3000. You can see it in the studio here. The MPC 3000 is still one hell of a drum machine even after 25 years. He also used the MPC 62. You can hear him talk about it here.
I had the MP62 and I had the MP60. Yeah, I said the MP62. Now that one you're looking at is the first hardware controller. Software, hardware controller, the one you just got through looking at. But that 3000 is where I started making the history of Battle Cat on a whole nother level. Like the Ghetto Jam, the first album I ever produced, my first sophomore debut album was Domino from Long Beach. So I used the SP1200 and the MP62.
He also used the MPC Live. You can see it here in this video. As far as controllers, BattleCat used the Native Instruments Complete Control X61. You can see it here in this video. DJ BattleCat is one of the West Coast's most influential hip-hop producers. He produced for Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg, and Spice One. Shoutouts to Doom Tapes, DJ Word, TBS Drink Team, and AJVY for recommending BattleCat. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Easy Mo Bee is a legendary hip-hop producer from Brooklyn, New York, who was one of the go-to producers of the late 80s and 90s. Easy Mo Bee's go-to machine was the SP1200 with the Akai S900 or S950. You can see him using it here. In an interview with the Real Hip Hop Interview, he was asked, "A lot of people have left hardware and moved on to digital audio workstations. What beat-making equipment are you currently using?" He responded, "I did the current album on the same exact equipment that I did Ready to Die, Doo-Bop, and Busta Rhymes' The Comin' album. In 2015, I still managed to make those machines sing. It's the SP1200 and the Akai Rack mount samplers, S900 and S950. There are a lot of other peer producers in the business that are shocked that I'm still using them. It's a special reason why I'm using them. Number one is because of the analog sound. And just have a chunkier, fatter, more round sound. When I first came into this, the idea for my sound was I always wanted it to sound like when you drop a needle to a 45. The way 45s are pressed, the grooves are spread apart. The wider the grooves are, the bigger the sound will be. That's why the old 45s and old 12 inches always sounded the best. I wanted that 45 sound. I always wanted that. The SP1200 helps me achieve that. It has that knock. I know I say it in damn near every video, but Easy Mo Bee is literally one of the greatest hip-hop producers of all time. He's one of the few producers that produced for Tupac and Biggie while they both were alive. He also helped produce Miles Davis' last studio album in 1991. He produced for some of the greatest artists of all time, including the Notorious B.I.G., Tupac, Nas, and Big Daddy Kane. Shoutouts to Onkel Mo, Dave Digger, and AJVY for recommending Easy Mo Bee. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Large Professor is one of the greatest East Coast hip-hop producers of all time. Helping to discover Nas and producing 3 songs on arguably the greatest hip-hop album of all time, Illmatic. Large Professor has had his fair share of machines. The centerpiece of his production setup is the SP1200 with the Akai S950. You can see him using it here. He used the SP1200 to produce some of his most revered work. If you need any more evidence of his supremacy on the SP1200, he taught DJ Premier how to use the SP1200. Enough said. The next drum machine Large Professor have used is the MPC 3000 LE. You can see him in this picture with it. You can also see the MPC 4000 in that picture as well. The MPC 4000 is still a monster today, even though it's still an underrated machine compared to a lot of the other MPCs I cover. The next drum machine Large Professor used is the MPC 1000. In an interview with Nod Factor, he was asked, "What are you using in the studio these days?" Large Professor answered, "I'm rocking an MPC 1000 and a Microkorg. I like those pieces. Coming from the early clunky drum machine days, these are blessings for me because they could damn near fit in your pocket. I like rocking with those and a few modules. I still keep my stuff sample based, so the 1000 is my choice." He also mentioned using a Microkorg synthesizer in that article as well. One of the most underrated drum machines that Large Professor used is the Ensoniq ASR X Pro. You can see it in the studio here alongside his MPC Renaissance. Large Professor is one of the East Coast's most influential hip-hop producers. He produced for Nas, Eric B. and Rakim, A Tribe Called Quest, and Busta Rhymes. Shoutouts to Super Rock and DJ Smash and Denied Confirmation for recommending Large Professor. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Damu the Fudge Monk is a modern hip-hop producer from Washington, D.C. Known for his personal prolific musical output, Damu have managed to do the unthinkable in today's music business. Let his music do the talking for him. He doesn't rely on social media antics or shameless self-promotion to get people to listen to his music. The centerpiece to his setup is the MPC 2000 and SP1200. You can see him using both of them in this video here. He's produced the vast majority of his instrumental albums with these machines, and it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. He's probably one of the few producers that I've covered in this series that actually use the MPC 2000. Even though this machine is regarded as one of the worst MPCs, artists like Damu and Kanye made great music using it. The next machine that Damu used is the MPC 3000. To be fair, I could have put this on the centerpiece list, which in my opinion is interchangeable. What haven't been said about the MPC 3000 at this point? It's a force to be reckoned with, and it's one of the few early MPCs that had 8-out included on it, straight out of the box. Damu the Fudge Monk is one of the bright spots in today's hip-hop. He's released over 24 full-length instrumental albums and have no social media presence. Shoutouts to Dwayne H., David Scott, and Darnell Hazelwood for recommending Damu the Fudge Monk. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Necro is an underground hip-hop producer from Brooklyn, New York. He released a lot of music during the 90s and early 2000s and helped to define the sound of underground hip-hop during that time. The centerpiece of Necro's production setup was the ASR-10. In this interview with British Hip Hop, he was asked, "What sort of equipment are you using to make both the beats and to record?" He answered, "The ASR-10. The ASR-10 is a classic machine and will stand the test of time due to the amazing albums that have been used making it." Necro also used the EPS-16 and also an MPC, even though he didn't state which one. He was asked in an interview with MV Remix, "Do you have a favorite sampler or drum machine?" He answered, "ASR-10. I never used anything else except EPS. ASR-10 ever since. I once robbed the studio and had an MPC. It didn't get me open." Necro's production has helped push underground hip-hop to where it is today. He's gone on to produce for underground rappers like Ill Bill, Cage, and Non-Fixion. Shoutouts to Pete Orks, the beatmaker, for the recommendation to cover Necro. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Lord Finesse is one of the East Coast's most influential hip-hop producers during the 90s. Hailing from the famed DITC crew, Finesse is one of the few producers from that era that also seen success as an artist as well. The centerpiece of his setup is the SP1200. You can see him in his picture holding it up. The next piece of gear Lord Finesse uses is the MPC 3000, the MPC 4000, and the Akai S950. In this interview with Hip Hop Ingest Small, he was asked, "When did you get into producing?" Finesse answered, "I got into producing around 92. I should have gone into it earlier, but when Diamond and Show got into it, I was too busy partying. I used to be a party fanatic. My lifestyle was wild. I mean, I would party from 17 to 7, go home to sleep, wake up about 16, and do it all again. So I did that for a couple of years, and then Show showed me how to work the SP1200. Jesse West showed me how to work the 950, Red Akai S950. From there, I elevated to the MPC 3000, and now I use the MPC 4000. The MPC 3000 is one of the best drum machines that have ever been released, and was the last drum machine that had the iconic Roger Lynn signature on the front. The MPC 4000 is still one of the most underrated MPCs of all time. The ones who know. Two of Lord Finesse's lesser known machines are the MPC 5000 and the MPC Renaissance. You can see him using the MPC 5000 in this video. The MPC 5000 is an outright beast and is relatively overlooked when it comes to the MPC line. He can also be seen using the MPC Renaissance in this video. The MPC Ren is the bridge between the old and the new MPCs, and to be fair, it helps the workflow become much quicker. Lord Finesse is one of the East Coast's most influential hip-hop producers. He's produced for Jay-Z, Biggie, Big L, and Dr. Dre. Shoutouts to Rel X, David Scott, Super Rockin' DJ Smash, Vern Large, Emil Ganja, and Denied Confirmation for recommending Lord Finesse. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Showbiz is an East Coast hip-hop producer who got his start under Diamond D. Hailing from the famed DITC crew, Showbiz was one half of the group Showbiz and AG. The centerpiece of his setup is the SP1200. You can hear Showbiz say it out of his own mouth.
SP1200 is weapon of choice. 2500, 1000, that's what it is.
The SP1200 is a beast and have been the center machine for a lot of the greatest producers of all time. He also used the Roland TR-808, Oberheim DMX, and the Roland TR-909. You can hear Showbiz talk about it here.
We was doing beats on the 808, the DMX, and not Roland 909.
The TR-808 and the TR-909 have cemented its place in history in several different genres. It's kinda amazing to see a machine from the 80s still define the sound now. Last but not least, Showbiz used the MPC 2500. You can see him in his video using it. Showbiz is one of the East Coast's best and underrated hip-hop producers. He's produced for Big Pun, KRS-One, The Far Side, and Fat Joe. Shoutouts to Kasim Akers, David Scott, Dave Digger, and Vern Large for recommending Showbiz. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I haven't covered yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Jake One is one of the most underrated producers in the game right now. Producer for heavyweights like Travis Scott and Future, Jake One came up in the underground and kept his roots in sample-based production. The centerpiece of his production setup was the ASR-10. You can hear him talking about it here.
ASR-10, you sample and you hit the button and the sample is right there. It was just that simple, and to me that was like, okay, that's what I want. I could sample like a record in the MPC, I could sample it in the SP1200, and I could do it on the ASR, and I think the ASR would just sound better. Another thing that's great about it, you can make it sound really grimy, or you can make it sound clean. Depending on what you're going for, it has that kind of range within the machine.
The next machine he used was the MPC 2000 XL. You can see it alongside his desk in this video in his studio. The keyboards that Jake One used is a sequential circuit 6-track analog synthesizer, the Moog Polymoog synthesizer, and the Moog Memory Moog. You can hear him talking about it in this video here.
I use a lot of vintage keyboards. I got a Fender Rhodes, I got a Memory Moog, Polymoog, Poly 6, I got a 6-track.
Moog Voyager, Nord Electro 2, Juno 106, Prophet.
Jake also used the Yamaha CS-01. You can see it in the studio here. He also used the Korg Poly 6 and the Dave Smith Instruments Morpho desktop. You can see him using it here. Jake One is one of hip-hop's best producers right now. He have produced for MF Doom, J. Cole, Drake, and 50 Cent. Shoutouts to Vern Large, Olivia Bristol, and Deny Confirmation for the suggestion to cover Jake One. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Juicy J was one of 2 producers of the world-famous 3 6 Mafia crew, alongside DJ Paul. 3 6 Mafia helped introduce the world of horrorcore Memphis rap and introduce the world-famous triplet flow that's so prevalent in today's hip-hop. The centerpiece and only machine of Juicy J's production setup is the SB1200. You can hear him talk about it here.
This is a SB1200. This is a classic drum machine. I make all my beats on this. Well, I wouldn't say all, but just about all. We got the old sounds I use. You're hearing them old 3 6 Mafia kicks and snares. It's coming from this. Back in my younger days, this drum machine actually took me to that next level. Make a lot of good dope beats on it. I made a bunch of beats for Megan Thee Stallion on here. Young Dolph. Everybody I've done production with. You know what I'm saying? T.I.
What haven't been said about the SB1200 already? His label mate DJ Paul have also used the SB1200, and it helped shape the early 90s sound of 3 6 Mafia. Juicy J is also one of hip-hop's greatest music producers. Juicy have produced for Lil Wayne, Megan Thee Stallion, T.I., and Future. Shoutouts to Jawad Shabazz, Doom Tapes, Source Boat, and DJ J Tro for the recommendation to cover Juicy J. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. DJ Paul was one of 2 producers of the world-famous 3 6 Mafia crew, alongside Juicy J. 3 6 Mafia helped introduce hip-hop to horrorcore Memphis rap and introduce the world-famous triplet flow that's been popular in today's hip-hop. The centerpiece of DJ Paul's production setup is the Roland W30. You can hear him talk about it here.
What I use, my weapon of choice, I still got it. I buy them every time I see them in the pawn shop. I use a Roland W30 workstation. That's my keyboard. I got a bunch of them at my house. And that was what it sampled for only 14 seconds. But I made the world out of that 14 fucking seconds. You get on the motherfucking turntable, you speed that motherfucker up as fast as they go, then you speed up with your finger to get a little more sample time about us. So I was Roland W30 workstation, still use it today.
The next machine that DJ Paul used is the SB1200. You can see him here with the SB1200. What haven't been said about the SB1200 already? Everyone from the East Coast to the West Coast to the South have used this machine, and for good reason. It's a beast. The next machine DJ Paul used is the MPC 4000. You can see him going crazy in this video using it. DJ Paul is one of hip-hop's greatest producers. Paul have produced for Drake, Trippie Redd, Project Pat, and UGK. Shoutouts to Jawad Shabazz, Doom Tapes, Source Boat, and DJ J Tro for the recommendation to cover DJ Paul. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Ski Beats is one of the best and most underrated producers of the East Coast. Coming from Greensboro, North Carolina, he helped to introduce the world to one of the greatest MCs and music moguls, Jay-Z. The centerpiece of Ski Beats' production setup is the SP1200 with a Kai S950 setup. You can see him using it here. The SP1200 is one of the greatest drum machines, and it shows in the resale prices now. The next machine he used is the MPC-X. You can see him using it here. The MPC-X is one of the newer drum machines, but it's a workhorse. The next machine he used is the Native Instruments Machine Studio. You can see him cooking up with it here. The Native Instruments machine have single-handedly helped to change the game and bridge the gap between hardware and software. The next and last machine he used is the Ableton Push. You can see it in the studio here. Ski Beats is one of hip-hop's best East Coast producers. Ski have produced for Currency, Jay-Z, Mos Def, and Mac Miller. Shoutouts to Sergio Casino, Olivia Bristol, and Mr. Live from New York for recommending Ski Beats for this video. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Prince Paul is a hip-hop producer from Long Island, New York. He helped discover one of the greatest hip-hop groups of all time in De La Soul and have produced some of the greatest albums of all time. The centerpiece of his production setup is the SP1200 and the Akai S950 setup. You can see him in his picture with the SP1200. He also used the EMU SP12, the Akai S900, and the Casio SK5. He was asked in an interview, "I know when talking to you for an earlier interview that you guys were using a Akai S900, an EMU SP12, and the Casio SK5 on 3 Feet High and Rising. Did you use the same equipment for De La Soul Is Dead?" Prince Paul answered, "Yeah, we used all of the same stuff. We were at the same studio, Calliope. I think we mixed the album at Island Media in New York. We basically used the same format." He was no stranger to drum machines and samplers. He used the ASR-10, MPC 2000, and the MPC 60. In an interview about Souls of Mischief, he said, "If people are true fans of Soul of Mischief, which, coming into it, I was, they know what they want to hear on this record. I sat and analyzed all of the records they've put out, even the solo projects. I tried to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. I told them, I'm going to make what should have been your follow-up to 93 Till Infinity. I'm going to make a retro record and scale back technology. To do that, I decided to use an SP12, ASR-10, MPC 2000, and MPC 60. He also spoke about using the Akai S950 in the podcast interview, but unfortunately, I had difficulties downloading it to put the audio in the video. Last but not least, he used the Roland TR-808. You can see him using it here. Prince Paul is one of the greatest hip-hop producers of all time, working with some of the greatest artists of all time, including De La Soul, MF Doom, RZA, Slick Rick, and Big Daddy Kane. Shoutouts to Deny Confirmation and Eddie Arcadia for the recommendation on Prince Paul. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover in the video, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. DJ Toomp is one of the best producers to come out of the South, period. He helped to usher in the South's dominance on hip-hop that we see today. The centerpiece of DJ Toomp's setup is the MPC 62 and the SP 1200. You can see it in his recording studio here. He also used the ASR-10. You can also see that in his music studio here. He also used a Roland Phantom X8. You can see it in his video here. Warning, for this one, I wasn't too sure if it's another keyboard, so let me know in the comment section below if I did choose the right Roland Phantom. To be honest, it's so much Roland Phantoms out there and they all got similar designs, so I wasn't too sure. So let me know in the comment section below if that is a Roland Phantom X8. He also used the Native Instruments machine. You can see him joyously using it in this video. Last but not least is the MPC 2500. You can see it behind him in the studio. DJ Toomp is one of the greatest Southern producers of all time. He worked with some of the greatest of all time, including T.I., Kanye West, Rick Ross, and Young Jeezy. Shoutouts to Seriously, Joe Farron, Manfria, and DJ J Trill for the recommendation to cover DJ Toomp. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Mannie Fresh is one of the greatest Southern hip-hop producers of all time and helped usher in the sound of an entire coast during the 90s. Coming from New Orleans, Louisiana, his impact on the game can still be felt today. The centerpiece of his production setup is the SP1200. You can see him using it here. The SP1200 is a mainstay in the series, and for good reason. It's just a beast. Mannie says he still uses it to this day, and the craziest part about it is that he never sampled on it. Can you hear Pete Rock shaking his head somewhere? The next machine that Mannie used is the MPC 2000 XL. You can see him using it alongside the Roland Phantom in his video. The next machine that Mannie used is the MPC 1000. You can see him using it here alongside the Akai LPK25. Last but not least is the world famous, wait for it, iPad. You can see him using it to program drums in his video. Mannie Fresh is arguably the greatest Southern hip-hop producer and helped define the sound of an entire coast. He worked with some of the greatest artists of all time, including Lil Wayne, Kanye West, Drake, and Juvenile. Shoutouts to Doom Tapes and DJ J Trill for the recommendation to cover Mannie Fresh. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Swizz Beatz is one of the greatest producers of all time and have made some of the biggest and most revered songs of all time. Coming from New York City, Swizz Beatz really cut his teeth in the late 90s and 2000s with the Rough Riders. He was one of the few producers that shied away from sample-based production and preferred to use keyboards in his production. I'm going to start this video off a little bit different by quoting an interview Swizz Beatz did in a Complex article about his equipment. He says, "My equipment list started from 2 BD10 Gemini turntables with a wood grain Gemini mixer, the small one. Then I graduated to the Technic 1200 and I got the other Gemini mixers. I always liked the Gemini mixers. On the production side, I started out with a Dr. Rhythm drum machine. I had an old TR-808. Then my cousin's boyfriend, who was Bobby Brown's brother, gave me an MPC-60, which was my first MP. I remember hooking that all up to my turntable, and that was that. As far as the keyboard, I remember getting a Korg M1. I was sampling from the M1 into my drum machine. I was the first person doing that. I had the black M1 where I was doing If I Should Die and Coming of Age for Jay-Z's Volume 2 Hard Knock Life. As a matter of fact, I did Money Cash Hoes on the Korg M1 too. From there, I started pairing up all these keyboards to my MP, so I would get the Triton, the Trinity, and all those different things that go with it. I was into the sound modules, so I had a bunch of those, and when I started to try new things, I didn't like it. Even today, I use the MPC 3000 and Logic, only because I'm able to bang out when I'm traveling. My new tracks are made on Logic. The stuff on Watch the Throne was from Logic. Busta Rhymes, Stop the Party, and a couple things off my album are from Logic because I'm traveling with it. My in-studio stuff is my MP and all those fucking keyboards. That pretty much sums up the early portion of gear Swizz used in his career. Nowadays, Swizz uses a lot of MPCs, including the MPC Studio, the MPC Renaissance, and you can also see him use the Ableton Push 2 in this video. Last but not least, Swizz used the Studio Logic VMK 188 Plus keyboard. He talks about it in his Billboard interview. Swizz Beatz is one of the greatest hip-hop producers of all time, working with some of the greatest artists of all time, including the late DMX, Kanye West, Drake, and Jay-Z. Shoutouts to Katrina 8402 and Amir Rashid for the recommendation to cover Swizz Beatz. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. If you have been into hip-hop for the last 10 years, it's almost impossible not to know the name Mike Dean. A legend to the ones who are in the know, Mike Dean's catalog includes Scarface of the Ghetto Boys, Tupac Shakur, Jay-Z, and Travis Scott. Since 2004, he's been a right-hand man in the studio, as well as on tour with Kanye West. The centerpiece of his studio is the MPC 3000. You can see him using one here. To be fair, Mike Dean is a multi-instrumentalist and preferred his fair share of Moog products. Mike Dean prefers the Moog Voyager and the Moog Matriarch, according to a Reverb article where he talks about his 5 pieces of equipment in the studio. In that article, he also mentions the Rupert Neve designed 5060 mixer, the Black Corporation Kijimi, Decker's Dream, and the Analog Goliath. Here is all of the other Moog products Mike Dean owned. Wait for it. The Moog Mother 32, the Moog Grandmother Dark, the Moog Matriarch Dark, the Moog System 35, the Moog Sub 37 Paraphonic Analog Synthesizer, the Moog Little Fatty Stage 2, the Moog DFAM, the Moog 1, and that's it. Mike is probably one of the biggest gearheads in the producer community, so you know he doesn't stop there. Here is all of the Behringer synths he owned. The Behringer Neutron, the Behringer Odyssey, the Behringer Model D, the Behringer K2, the Behringer MS1 BK, the Behringer RD8, and the Behringer Vocoder VC340. To be fair, he received the entire Behringer line of synthesizers from Behringer and posted on his Instagram page. In an interview with Tape OP, he was asked, when you left Selena's band, what was your studio rig like? He answered, I was 23 or 24. At that point, it had a couple of drum machines. My first was a Sequential Circuits drum tracks and the Alesis HR16. My first recording machine was the Commodore 64 computer. It changed my life because I could do 8 tracks, which was a big deal then. Also, according to that article, he used the ASR-10 and the Ensoniq EPS-16 Plus, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to verify it due to them wanting a subscription of $6 a month. I love y'all. That's kind of steep to be paying just to verify 2 machines. I'll put it in the gear list because there's a very high chance he actually used those machines due to his love of collecting keyboards. But let me know in the comment section if you would have paid the $5.95 to verify it. As far as Roland machines, he owned the Roland JD-XI, the Roland Juno 106, and the Roland Jupiter 8. You can also peep the Rhodes in that picture as well. As far as his Korg keyboards, he owned the Korg M3, the Korg Triton, the Korg Delta, and the Korg Trinity. Being a synth head, you know Mike didn't have the Sequential Prophet 6 and the world famous Yamaha CS80. Last but not least, he owned the ASM Hydrasynth and the Arturia Matrix Brute analog synthesizer. As far as DAWs, Mike Dean uses Ableton, FL Studio, and of course the granddaddy of them all, Pro Tools. Mike Dean is one of the most accomplished producers of the 21st century, working with some of the greatest artists of all time, including Travis Scott, Kanye West, Madonna, Beyonce, and The Weeknd. Shoutouts to Manfria for the recommendation on Mike Dean. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Jermaine Dupri is one of the greatest producers of all time. He helped to introduce the world to some of our favorite artists growing up, like Bow Wow, to co-writing and producing some of Usher's most legendary songs. But the problem is, Jermaine Dupri is often overlooked. The centerpiece of his production setup is the MPC 62. You can see him using it here. You can also see the Roland MC909 in that video as well. The next machine that JD uses is the MPC 3000 LE. You can see him using it here. The next machine that JD uses is the Native Machine. You can see him using it here. He also owns the MPC Renaissance. You can see him using that here. The next machine he uses is the Roland MV8000 drum machine. You can see it in this video with the mouse on top of it. He uses his fair share of Roland machines, including the MC808 and the aforementioned MC909. He also used a Zoom Streetbox SB246. You can see him using that here. The latest machine that Jermaine have been using is the MPC X. You can see him using that here. Jermaine Dupri is one of the greatest producers of all time. He worked with some of the greatest artists of all time, including Jay-Z, Usher, Mariah Carey, and Janet Jackson. Shoutouts to M. Nebraska, Mike and Jay Venus, and Amir Rashid for the recommendation to cover Jermaine Dupri. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Marley Marl is one of the greatest hip-hop producers of all time and helped pave the way for East Coast hip-hop to dominate in the late 80s. I'll let Marley Marl tell you about the machines he used in the early days.
See, back then when we was making these songs, we had all these samplers, all these separate drum machines on the side. We used to use the Akai MPC60, the SP1200. We're not going to go into that. Today, we're going to simple it down. We're going to show you how it's done in Ableton.
The only machine he left out was the Roland TR-808 drum machine, which he used to make a lot of his early hits. Nowadays, he uses more modern machines like the Ableton APC40 and the MPC Renaissance to achieve his style. You can see him using the APC40 here, and you can see him using the MPC Renaissance here. Marley Marl is one of the greatest producers of all time. He worked with some of the greatest artists of all time, including LL Cool J, Big Daddy Kane, Kool G Rap, and Heavy D. Shoutouts to subscriber 10304, Denied Confirmation, Eddie Def The Last Creep, Dominique, I'ma try to pronounce your last name but I might butcher it, Ami Huho, and Swerve World ENT for the recommendation to cover Marley Marl. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, or something interesting about the producer that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Ninth Wonder is one of the greatest and most successful hip-hop producers of all time. Coming from North Carolina, he helped revolutionize the internet hip-hop production scene with the introduction to the unofficial remix album that have become popular in the last 10 years, and also inked one of the strongest production discographies in all of hip-hop. Coming on the scene in 2003 by way of Little Brother, Ninth Wonder paved the way for the newer generation of internet producers to come. The centerpiece of his production setup was FL Studio, formerly known as Fruity Loops. In an interview on FL Studio's website, he was asked, alright, so production-wise, I gotta say that Ninth Wonder is absolutely incredible. I know he relies heavily on computers to create beats, but specifically, what equipment/programs does he use to produce? The programs we use are Cool Edit Pro and FL Studio. Those are the two programs that we use, and that's what we did the whole album on. Ninth Wonder was the first producer that was criticized for using the DAW on his computer to make beats. He made the most acclaimed work from Little Brother on FL Studio. Even though he went on to use more contemporary and classic drum machines, he is a pioneer for the FL Studio brand and be taken seriously by the hip-hop community. The next drum machine he used was the MPC 2500. You can see him in this video using the MPC 2500. This is one of the most popular and community-supported MPCs right now. The next drum machine that Ninth used is the SP1200. You can see it in the background of his studio in this video. There is nothing more you can say about this machine that haven't been said to this point, and it's primarily the reason why it goes for so much on the secondary market. Ninth Wonder is also a big fan of the Native Instruments machine line. He currently uses the Machine Studio and the Machine Studio MK3. You can see him in this video using the Machine Studio, and in this video using the Machine MK3. 9th Wonder have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time, and helped bridge the gap from hardware-centered analog production setups of the 90s to computer-based production setups of today. 9th Wonder is the OG of the internet producer of today, but unlike many of them, blazed the trail for producers to follow with production on some of the greatest artists of all time, including Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, and Drake. He still continues to release quality work, and this is all due to a commitment to excellence and a genuine love for hip-hop. The other reason is from the tools he chooses to use to craft that perfect beat. Shoutouts to Omar Art and Soul Scientific for recommending 9th Wonder, and if you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in purchasing any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Nujabes is one of the greatest and most influential hip-hop producers of all time. Coming from Tokyo, Japan, he helped revolutionize the sound of hip-hop with pioneering lo-fi hip-hop and chill-hop in hip-hop. The centerpiece of Nujabes' production setup was the MPC 2500. You can see him in this picture using the MPC 2500. This is still one of the most popular and community-supported MPCs right now. The next drum machine that Nujabes used is the MPC 2000 XL. On a sound and recorded interview in 2003, you can see them listening in his equipment. This drum machine has been coveted since it released in the late 90s and early 2000s. Nujabes also used the Akai S950 sampler. You can see it in his studio here. This sampler is like the unofficial sidekick to the MPC and helped craft some of the greatest records of all time. Nujabes' keyboard of choice was the Roland A80. You can see it in his picture of his studio. Last but not least is his rack mount Roland JP8080 synthesizer. You can see it in his picture of his studio. Nujabes have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop instrumentals of all time and helped pioneer the lo-fi music genre today. He's gone on to inspire a lot of artists and producers including Logic and Joey Badass. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but the music he left us will continue to inspire generations to come. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Havoc is one of the greatest and most influential East Coast hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Brooklyn, New York, but raised in Queensbridge, he helped push the sound of East Coast hip-hop with the release of the landmark Mobb Deep albums. The centerpiece of Havoc's production setup was the MPC 60. In this interview, Havoc says, "Yeah, when I first started, everybody knows that I started with the MPC 60. This was the first MPC that came out and still have the ability to create some of the best beats you'll ever hear." Havoc was a big fan of the Akai drum machine line. You can see him in his video using the MPC 2000 and the MPC 3000. He also states that the MPC 3000 is the drum machine that he prefers. He also used the MPC 4000. You can see him in his video using it. Havoc also used the Ensoniq EPS 16 Plus. He says in an interview, Yeah, when I first started, everybody knows that I started with the MPC 60, EPS Plus inside the keyboard when I used to sample on that too. Havoc also have been using newer equipment as well. He states in an interview that he uses the Native Instrument machine as well as Logic. Havoc have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time and helped push East Coast boom bap to where it is at today. He's going on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists of all time like Nas, 50 Cent, Eminem, and Kanye West. Shoutouts to Bernard Bates for the recommendation to cover Havoc. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. DJ Quik is one of the greatest and most influential West Coast hip-hop producers of all time. Born in Compton, California, he helped define the sound of West Coast hip-hop with his self-released albums, as well as bringing G-Funk to hip-hop in the early 90s. The centerpiece of DJ Quik's production setup was the MPC 62. In this video, DJ Quik says,
"We were all into MPC 60s, too. If you knew better, you got yours. You got the MPC 62.
This was the second MPC that came out and still have the ability to create some of the best beats you'll ever hear. DJ Quik's second go-to machine was the SP1200. You can hear him talk about it here.
Battlecat actually introduced me to the MPC 60 when it first came out, and I wasn't ready for it because I wasn't ready for all the MIDI implementation because I was a SP1200 man.
The SP1200 is still one of the greatest drum machines of all time, even after 30 years. DJ Quik was a big fan of the Akai drum machine line. You can see him in his video using the MPC 3000. He also states that the MPC 3000 is one of his favorite drum machines. DJ Quik also used the MPC Renaissance. You can see him here posting his custom one on Twitter. The last drum machine DJ Quik is known to use is probably the most famous one, the Roland TR-808. He states in this interview that he used it to make Can You Work With That.
This beat right here. Thank you, bro. Use the real 808 drum machine. Not the samples.
Not the samples, right?
That the machine.
You still had the machine?
Still had it.
The keyboards that DJ Quik was known to use is the Roland JD800 synthesizer and the Roland JP8000. You can see both of them in this picture with DJ Quik. He also used the Roland SH101 synthesizer. In the interview with Fader, he talks about using the synthesizer to enhance the 808. DJ Quik have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time and helped push West Coast hip-hop to where it is today. He's gone on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists of all time like Tupac, Jay-Z, Shaq, yes, I'm talking about the basketball player, and Snoop Dogg. Shoutouts to Daryl Johnson for the recommendation to cover DJ Quik. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Knowledge is one of the greatest current hip-hop producers out right now. Born in New Jersey but raised in Philly, he's helping to define the current sound of hip-hop with his self-released albums as well as his high-profile collaborations. The centerpiece of Knowledge's production setup is Ableton. He stated in an interview that he preferred to use software over hardware. He accompanies this Ableton with the Ableton Push. You can see him using it in this video. The other machine he uses with his setup is the Novation Nocturne plug-in controller. You can see him using that here. He also uses the MPD-24. You can see him using that here. Even though Knowledge preferred to use a computer to produce, he still have his fair share of hardware. As far as Akai, he used an MPC 2000 XL. You can see him using it here. He also used the infamous Boss SP303 before he got his computer. You can hear him talking about using it in the Korg M1 here.
I actually, before I even got my own computer, I had a SP303, you know, for a while, and
like old school.
Yeah, and had a few synths that I just bought. Had this old Kurzweil from back in the day, Korg M1, you know, it's like Korg's first keyboard ever. And I used to just record in, you know, to the 303 and.
Knowledge have produced some of the most critically acclaimed hip-hop songs and albums of all time, and is currently helping to push hip-hop to heights we have never seen. He's gone on to produce for a lot of the greatest artists like Kendrick Lamar, Anderson .Paak, and Action Bronson. Shoutouts to Elijah Zachary for the recommendation to cover Knowledge. If you have a producer that I haven't done yet, put it in the comment section below. If you are interested in any of the equipment I spoke about in this video, I have included a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching.